Welcome to the sit down with Malik Wright, TWSN's UFC 311 pre show, where we're going to go through the entire card and give our predictions, our analysis, and our best bets for this upcoming UFC 311 card. Joining me here is TWSN analyst Will Holland, Evan Theo Harris. Here's an interesting fight here. Kevin Holland taking on Rainier de Ritter. Listen, Rainier's grappling ability was impressive in his UFC debut. Obviously, he was able to beat Gerald Meerschaert. I don't know. This is a weird fight. Kevin Holland's better on the feet, but Kevin Holland finds a way to lose fights that he has no business losing. And I just feel like maybe Rainier didn't stick to his game plan as much as he probably should have, and he looks sloppy at points. Um, you know, it was that factor that him and GM3 trained together before, so maybe that was a little bit. It was his UFC debut. I think Rainier de Ritter beats Kevin Holland, man. Though I do, I want to pick Kevin Holland. I want to side with Kevin Holland, but I'm not going to be a victim of recency bias and be like, you know what, he looked terrible or didn't look great in his UFC debut. There were so many contributing factors that went into that. This is a fight Kevin Holland could win. This is style fights Kevin Holland has won in the past, but I just feel like Rainier is going to keep that momentum going, and I think he has that ability. You know, he's going to look to strike, but I think he has that ability to take this fight to the ground and really just dominate Kevin Holland on the ground. I really believe he has that ability to do so, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. Evan, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this fight's a pick 'em for a reason. We're sitting at like minus 110 both ways.
Yeah.
If I'm going one way or another, I think I do lean Kevin Holland.
Wow.
I watched the De Ritter Gerald Meerschaert fight, and at this point in his career, I don't really see much. I don't take much that Gerald Meerschaert does as a high level test. And he's been around the block a few times, but De Ritter really looked slow to me. I actually think he might benefit from a weight change, moving him up to 205. He's a big middleweight. I think that weight cut is going to be a serious problem, while Kevin Holland is a much more natural middleweight. I just think Kevin Holland's speed is going to be something that De Ritter's not going to have an answer for. Holland, though, we've seen it time and time again. He just loses fights that he shouldn't lose.
Yeah.
He doesn't take this seriously at all. And I think he's kind of made that clear. There really is no intention of him to climb the ranks and try and become a champion one day. Like, that's not what he's here for. Kevin Holland is here to try and knock people out or get a finish. Like, it's just, but I do think that Kevin Holland, as long as he can stay on his feet, which I think because of De Ritter's lack of speed, I think he will be able to primarily. I think he's going to be able to catch De Ritter, and he might even knock him out in the first or second round.
Man, if there was a prop bet where I could live bet that Kevin Holland's going to walk out to LiAngelo Ball tweaker, I would do it because I 100% believe that he's going to walk out to that fight on Saturday. I mean, to that sound on Saturday. I really believe that. Danny, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it goes one of two ways, and this is where I'm looking from a betting perspective. Is Holland has publicly, been very, very adamant that he doesn't want to fight wrestlers. Been very adamant. He wants to strike. He wants to stand and bang. He wants to have an exciting fight. This is not his best friend. And when you see how his last fight ended, it ended from a rib injury. I think it's either a Ritter win by decision, just wrestles him, but I also see the Holland by KO because I watched that Ritter fight, and Ritter, if Meerschaert was a much better striker, he would have had Ritter out of there. And I think that the striking of Kevin Holland can, cause some serious, serious problems. But if I had to bet right now, I'd probably say the safer option is to go Ritter because that kind of covers your ass from a Kevin Holland implosion as well as a just an absolute wrestling domination from Ritter.
He doesn't care. It looks like he doesn't care. He's not trying out there when he's fighting. He's done it too many times. I'm not letting him bite me in the ass again. I'm going to take RDO.
All right, let's move on over to lightweight bout. Renato Moicano. I'm sorry, Renato Money Moicano taking on Beneil Dariush. Guys, is Benny washed? Or is this a spot where he can remind everyone who he is to a degree? We do know how good Benny is on the ground. We know that he wouldn't mind being there, but is he going to be able to even employ that game plan against a guy like Renato Moicano who's so skilled on the ground, but also is skilled on the feet. What are you guys' thoughts? Evan, we'll start with you.
I think to answer your question about is Benny washed, I don't think there's a clear answer to that right now because you've got his last 2 losses. They're against Charles Oliveira and Arman Sarukian. Arman Sarukian, obviously he's main eventing this card, and then Charles Oliveira, he's probably fighting the winner of that fight. But I think I do lean towards Renato Moicano in this one. Dariush, I think he has the more polished stand-up game of the two. Sometimes Moicano looks a little, lost out there on the feet. But what I've seen out of Moicano is that he can really just take a beating early on and then hang around there until he can get his game plan to work. And I think in this one, I think they're right around the same age, like maybe just a couple months off of each other. But Moicano just seems like he's really even entering a second prime in his career, while Dariush seems to be slipping down those ranks. It would not surprise me if Dariush comes out, lands a big shot early and actually just does remind everybody that he's a top 7 guy, could even be a top 5 guy at lightweight for a reason. But just based off of what I've seen over the past couple of years at this point, I really think that Moicano is going to ride this momentum in, maybe lose the first round of this fight, but be able to get it done either by a late finish or win a decision based off of some grappling output.
Well, I got to get your opinion on this.
Yeah, so I've had this conversation with myself all week, and up until this week, I was on the Moicano train, but this is my Hail Mary of the card. I'm going to side with Beneil Dariush here and assume that he's not washed. I mean, like Evan said, we can't really know until we see this fight. This fight will tell us, is he washed? Does he still have it? I think he's going to have a good performance where he doesn't exactly remind us that this is the guy that was supposed to beat Islam Makhachev years ago, but I think he's going to put on a good performance, remind everybody who he is. This is still the guy that won 8 fights in a row. And Moicano is a great fighter. I've been a big fan of his. I like the streak he's on. But he's not got like one-shot flatline KO power, which has been Beneil's kryptonite for these last couple fights. Charles Oliveira has that. Arman Sarukian has that. I don't think that Moicano has that. So I think that Beneil will be able to survive in this fight. I think he'll steal the first 2 rounds, and I think the 3rd round will be competitive. Maybe Moicano takes that, makes it a 29-28 decision, but I'm going to go with Dariush in this.
I'm with you, and this is one of my other favorite fights on this card. I'm taking Beneil Dariush to win this fight, and this is probably going against all typical MMA math when you look at a fighter's trajectory on the up of Moicano's, won his last so-and-so fight. His last fight was in another weight class, so you can even look and say that's not a real technical loss. Beneil Dariush and how Moicano can win this fight is the past couple fights he's won, immediately St. Denis took him down, and it was pretty much over from there, right? St. Denis never got up. Moicano controlled him. He's not going to do that to Beneil Dariush, or Dariush has not shown that to be in his arsenal of, hey, this is how guys beat me. Nobody's really taken Dariush down and held him there for the course of an entire round. He's too skilled on the ground, and that's where I lean to Beneil Dariush, because I think that Beneil Dariush does have serious power on the feet. I think he does have much better striking than, some of these other guys that, maybe would have lost to a Moicano in the wrestling department. But I think that we're going to see a stand-up fight in this. I think that their ground games are going to cancel each other out. And when you see 2 guys who are very proficient at one thing, a lot of times you tend to see them fight the other way. If there's 2 dominant wrestlers, a lot of times you see a stand-up fight. And I think that we could see these guys really just be trading on the feet as well as transitioning, flowing on the ground. I don't think Moicano's path to victory is to lay on him and dominate him on the ground. I think we see a striking match, and I think that Beneil Dariush has the chops to mix it up with him on the feet. So I think that this fight goes beyond the first round. I think I'm going to take Beneil Dariush to upset Moicano in this fight.
So we all see it that way, that this fight, Will, you kind of turned upside down on us. I don't know what happened there, but we want to keep the conversation rolling. Let's move on over to the light heavyweight division. Jerry Prochazka is taking on Jamal Hill. Listen, in this fight, I like Jamal Hill. I think Jamal's going to remind everybody who he is. And I think that Jamal is going to win this fight, man. I think he's going to, I think he's going to be able to hurt Jiri. I haven't been impressed with Jiri his last couple of performances. Jiri's teased the idea of going down to middleweight. I think this will be the fight that makes him officially make that move. I think Jamal Hill knocks out Jiri Prochazka on Saturday, or TKO if you want to call it that. Give me Jamal Hill to win this fight. Will, what are your thoughts?
See, I don't think I've made an official prediction for this one. This is the most even fight on the card, and as we get closer, I kind of
really
I start to yes.
You think? Wait. Let's go back.
This fight.
You think these two are even?
No,
Jiri Prochazka is sloppy on the feet.
No. Listen, now skillfully, I don't think they're even. I do think that Jamal Hill is better skillfully. Yuri's got that unorthodox style that, let's be real, it's not really going to work against the most high-level guys. Alex Pereira just made a fool of this guy 2 times in the last year or whatever it was. I don't know how to predict this fight. It's so – because Yuri has a really weird unorthodox style that shouldn't work, but it does sometimes. And this feels like it could be one of those fights where it does work and he does catch Hill, because Hill's not the best defensively, and I think that Yuri has that scary KO power. I could see this fight going Yuri by KO. I could see it being Jamal Hill by TKO, Jamal Hill by points. I'm just not sure how to call this one. If I'm going to take a shot right now, I think I'm going to be with you on this. I think that Jamal Hill can win this fight. I'm not sure if it's by KO, but I will roll with Jamal Hill.
Yeah, I'm with you, Malik, on this. I think that Jamal Hill is going to win this fight. I really thought about taking Yuri just because of that unorthodox style, but there's a lot of things about Yuri that scare me in this. Yuri's coming off one of the most brutal KO losses I've seen, not based off of just faceplant KO, but I mean the amount of accumulated damage I think he took in that fight after the end of the first round. And then he just came out. He didn't even look like he was walking right when they put him off the stool. I think that fight probably should have been called in between rounds. He just came right off the stool and got hit with a head kick. He was out there, and then he took like 4 follow-up shots from Pereira. I mean, I'm worried about his chin coming into this. And obviously, both of these guys have power. I think the best bet in this fight is that under on rounds. I don't think this makes it out of the first round, no matter who wins. I don't think either of them have very good technical defense. But offensively, I think that Jamal Hill, as long as he prepares that, I don't know what's going to come at me with Yuri. If Yuri starts doing some crazy stuff, then just kind of back up, let him do what he's going to do, and then find your openings. I just think Jamal Hill's the technically better fighter here. If he can land, really anything clean, Yuri's probably going out. I think the other thing that really sold me with Hill here is that they both fought Glover Teixeira, and I think Yuri Prochazka versus Glover Teixeira might be the best fight I've ever seen, like in the modern era of UFC. I was on the edge of my seat in every exchange in that fight. I loved every second of that fight, but I didn't love every second of the Jamal Hill fight against Glover Teixeira because Jamal Hill just beat the crap out of him the whole time. And I don't think that Glover got significantly worse between his fight with Yuri and his fight with Jamal. I think that those performances just show the different levels between these two. I'm going to take Jamal Hill to win this inside the first round by knockout.
Wow. Yeah. I think that there's 2 things I love for this. First off, this fight to end in a KO TKO, it's minus 185. I think that's an amazing bet. You get 15 minutes with these two who likely aren't going to be mixing it up on the ground. I think this fight will end in a KO or TKO. And for me, it's really simple. I'm not going to read too much into, their past fight against Pereira, but when I look at what Jiri's fight against Rakic, for me, that really sold it for me. I said, hey, that was a fight where Jiri outdogged Rakic, but he was getting dogged in that first round. He was getting dogged before he turned it around in the second round. I think that Jamal Hill's power is going to be too much. And Jamal Hill versus Pereira, I think that was more indicative of Pereira's power and Pereira's skill than it was of the type of fighter that Jamal Hill is. That was a very short fight. We didn't really even get to see Jamal Hill land one punch. I think that Jamal Hill comes in this and knocks out Jiri Prochazka in round 2.
Guys, I believe that Jamal Hill is very intelligent, and I think Jamal Hill knows what he's doing. I think there's a reason why he created a dust-up with Alex Pereira at the UFC PI Center. I think that with a good performance, he could probably steal the next title shot away from Ankalaev, because Ankalaev, unfortunately, hasn't really done anything to really make a stamp that he should be the next title contender. He's been winning. He's had great performances, but it could be a very situation similar to Islam Makhachev, who had to win 10 fights in a row and really get the opportunity to fight for a belt. I think that if Jamal goes out there and has an entertaining performance, the UFC fans what they want. They get what they want. Everyone was pretty excited for Jamal Hill, Alex Pereira after that dust up. People are like, well, these guys need to fight again. If you're looking to bet Jamal Hill via KO, taking a betting angle from this, is sitting at plus 210. Jamal Hill to win this fight via KO is sitting at plus 210. He certainly has the power to hurt anybody in the division. I love that Jamal Hill has a crisp 1-2. And I like guys going into a fight that have purpose. Jiri doesn't know if he wants to be a middleweight or if he wants to be a light heavyweight. Jamal Hill knows he wants to fight Alex Pereira for the belt again. And regardless if Jiri was to win this fight, the chances of Jiri getting another title shot against Alex Pereira are very slim after being knocked out twice. He won't get a shot for the belt again as long as Alex Pereira is champion, I don't think. And so with that all being said, I think Jamal Hill wins this fight via KO. To me, the value is amazing on this, and I think you guys should 100% tail. Let's keep the fight going. We have our first championship bout in the bantamweight division. Merab Dvalishvili taking on Umar Nurmagomedov. Let me just start off by saying something, make it quick. I think Umar is going to outclass Merab here. I think he is going to make Merab work, make Merab uncomfortable. And Merab, believe it or not, he was a striker when he first started his mixed martial arts career. He developed into the wrestling game after working with Ray Longo and all those guys. I think that we're going to see a clear difference in the wrestling game between Merab and Umar Nurmagomedov. I think this is crazy to say, I think Merab's best path to victory is to keep the fight standing and to utilize his striking and try and outpace and out cardio a guy like Umar Nurmagomedov, who's had some interesting performances recently. I think Umar wins this fight. I think Umar outclasses him. Give me Umar Nurmagomedov to beat Merab Dvalishvili and become the new UFC bantamweight champion. Will, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it simple. Umar's better everywhere. I think that Umar is the best fighter in the class. I really, really highly rate the 50-45 victory he had over Corey Sandhagen. I know it's his only ranked win, but look, I think Umar is better everywhere. I'm just going to keep it simple like that. I think he wins this fight 50-45 against Merab. Maybe 49-46. The cardio of Merab is, of course, always a weapon. I think he could take a late round, maybe a couple late rounds off of Umar, but I think Umar wins this one handedly.
Evan?
So I did a piece on this early on when this first came out. I said I was really confident that Umar Nurmagomedov was going to win this fight. Honestly, now I'm not as confident. Wow. I don't hate Merab Dvalishvili in this fight. What I do love is his plus 240 line. He's really he started in his UFC at 0-2, but he's really turned it around at this point. I really see both points here that Umar Nurmagomedov, he's probably got the technically all around better skill set. But I really think what is going to determine this fight is just how good is Umar Nurmagomedov's gas tank, and it's obviously going to be tested against Merab. I think that's just pretty obvious in this fight that Merab tests everybody's gas tank. Merab, I don't care what Umar puts out there. Merab's gonna be able to go all 5 rounds. He's gonna be just kind of bouncing around by the end of the fight, no matter what. But if Umar Nurmagomedov's cardio can last 3 rounds and he can win the first 3 rounds just based off his technically better skill set, then yes, I think he takes the belt off of Merab. But I just don't know if that's going to happen. I think my official pick will be Umar Nurmagomedov by a really, really close decision, but I'm just not super confident in saying that Umar Nurmagomedov is going to win this fight. Definitely not confident enough to bet on a minus 330 money line.
So you're picking Merab Dvalishvili to win this, you're saying?
No, I'm picking Umar. I'm going to pick Umar because I do think he's the technically better fighter, but I'm not confident enough on it to say that I can bet on Umar Nurmagomedov to win at a -330 line.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I think I echo pretty much everything you said. Umar is the better fighter. He's got Habib in his corner. He's got the legacy. He's got, the better wrestling background. He's got, the much more diversified striking. I mean, you've seen his KO against Raoni Barcelos. The one thing that I've circled for Merab is pressure. And if there's going to be a pathway to victory, I've seen Umar's fight. I think it was 2 fights ago where he went to decision. I forgot who he fought. But the way that Umar was pressured in that fight and was on his back foot is the pathway I think that he could lose this fight. And for a defending champion who's on an 11-fight win streak right now, albeit a lot of those were by decision, a lot of those were by wrestling. You could look at the Aldo fight, held him up against the cage. There is a real pathway to victory for Merab, and I think it's the intangible of a guy who doesn't have to deal with, I think he's going to fight a lot more freely. You look at the fight against Sean O'Malley, right? That was a fight, a huge spectacle, UFC Noche. The guy who walked in there with zero pressure on his back was Merab. And I think we'll find out very quickly what type of fighter Merab is going to be. So I think that I'm very with you. I think Umar is going to win this fight. And we'll see very quickly, is Merab, does he have the pressure of being the defending champion? Does he have the pressure of, hey, shit, I'm going up against a guy who's a better wrestler than me? If he doesn't have that, and if we can see him pressure Umar, I think there's a real path to victory. But he's got to find a way to break Umar. And I don't think we've seen one of the Dagestan, the Khabib, Islam, one of these guys truly break under pressure. So that's what I'm circling. I just think that there is value on the plus 260 for Merab. I wouldn't necessarily advise it. I'd wait to live bet it. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the fight.
And the fight you're talking about is when Umar Nurmagomedov took on Beskat Almakhan, I believe.
Probably.
He is the fighter from Kazakhstan, and he took the fight on short notice. This guy was very accomplished coming into the UFC. A lot of hype. A lot of people kind of knew he was going to be gamed. This feels very similar to. Hear me out for a second. Isn't it crazy how Arman Sarukian is fighting Islam Makhachev, right? And, Arman took the fight short notice, very close fight, against Islam Makhachev the first time out. And you got a guy who, in Arman, who everyone knew was very skilled outside the UFC, and they knew that based off that performance, he would have a good career. Beskat Almakhan can definitely see himself. I can definitely see him fighting Umar Nurmagomedov in the future again, 100%. It has that similar trajectory. It could have that similar trajectory. That all being said, I think a lot of people sometimes don't realize how good the Nurmagomedovs are, and it's because number one, Khabib had the same problem when he was coming up. A lot of contenders, people with their names, with numbers next to their name, didn't want to fight him. And that when the times that they did have numbers next to the name, he went out there and he dismantled them. The one guy that Umar got a chance to fight, who was ranked, who people rated the victory, he went out there and he worked him. Right? Same thing with the Islam Makhachev. So for me, it's one of those things where these two. It's going to be an entertaining fight because it's going to be a different style of fight. It's not going to be what we're typically used to. These guys both have good gas tanks. These guys both can wrestle. Who's the better wrestler? I give that to Umar Nurmagomedov. Who's the better striker? That depends. That I guess that's solely up to you. I think Umar has definitely shown that he's more advanced in the striking game than Habib was at this stage, and a lot of other fighters. And it wouldn't shock me one bit if Umar went out there and he wanted to actually keep the fight standing and also just prove a point. I think that Umar Nurmagomedov is going to win this fight going away. I believe that. I think he'll beat Merab Dvalishvili, and that's no shot against Merab. I think if you match Merab up against many different contenders in this weight class, I think he'd win. Right? I think he'd win. But I just think that Umar is just that one, going to be that one guy that's going to be a little difficult for him to kind of get over on. And I think that if Umar wants to go out there and employ a wrestling game plan, he can do that. The reason why I'm like, just be careful with that a little bit is because Merab does have a very good gas tank. He has a good gas tank when he's pressuring you. But what happens when you become the nail? What happens when Umar is the hammer? What happens when Umar is walking you down? Things could look a little dicey. Things could look a little different. And so I agree with you, Daniel. I think this could be a huge test for a guy in Merab Devashvili and figuring out what kind of champion he's going to be. But I definitely agree that this probably won't be the last time we see these two fight. We'll probably see these guys go at it again here. Let's move on over to the main event. Lightweight championship on the line. Arman Tsarukyan taking on Islam Makhachev. Let's start with you, Evan.
Yeah. They met 5 years ago. It was a much closer fight than anticipated. But I honestly think this fight goes a lot like the first one did. I have Islam winning this fight. I think the major difference here, as in shape and as strong as Arman Tsarukyan looks, Islam Makhachev is kind of a weight bully for this division. I mean, he probably is going to walk into that cage at 170, 175. And I just think he's going to look and just feel significantly stronger than Arman will in this fight. I think it's going to be a lot of grappling. And honestly, since their first meeting, I think that although both of them have gotten a lot better, I think the biggest improvement made might be Islam Makhachev's striking. His defense on the feet can sometimes get him in trouble, but he's not facing as clean of a striker as he has like against Dustin Poirier. I think that he is the better striker between him and Tsarukyan, and I think he's honestly the better wrestler as well. I think Sarukyan's definitely going to have his moments. He definitely has power. I really think that Sarukyan's only real way to win this fight is I think he'd have to knock Islam Makhachev out, and I'm just not sure that's going to happen. I think that would be taking a flyer on a guy who I do think is the technically worse fighter. I think it's going to be a fun fight. I'm really excited for this. I think this could easily be a top 5 fight of the year. But I'm definitely going to take Islam Makhachev to win this fight, probably by a decision.
Well, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have Islam winning a very, very close competitive decision over Arman. I've been high on Arman, and I think that this fight is going to actually take place primarily on the feet. I don't think that wrestling and grappling is going to be as prominent. It's not going to be as big a factor in this fight as it might have been in the first. The first one was an insanely entertaining grappling fest, and it was just like paradise if you love that kind of fight. I don't think that's what this is going to be. I think this is going to take place on the feet for the most part because of the threat of the takedown of both guys. I think that their grappling cancels each other out, so it's going to stay on the feet. And if it stays on the feet, I like Islam Makhachev to do just a bit more on the feet to get this one done. I think this is going to be a close fight. Going into the 5th round, I could see this being a 2-2 fight. Whoever takes round 5 takes the belt. And if it comes down to that, I'm going to take Islam Makhachev.
Daniel.
I really don't think that this is a close fight. I don't. I think that, and I'm not going to say it's going to go one of two ways. I think, Evan, you hit the nail on the head where the pathway to victory for Arman obviously could be to wrestle, but I really think it's going to be, hey, you've seen the points where Islam's been most in trouble. It's been where he's gotten rocked on the feet. Alexander Volkanovski last round, that was really just him taking him down, and having success on the feet. But Dustin Poirier had serious success on the feet. For me, it's the intangible of their last fight was 6 years ago. I think Islam's gotten so much better, and so has Arman as well. But I think that Islam has serious multiple paths to victory. I think there is a chance where Islam could submit Arman. We saw Arman in dangerous positions against Charles Oliveira. I think that the striking of Islam gives him a much better, chance than in their first fight, because I don't think Islam's striking was anywhere near where it was now. So I really think that this isn't a close fight. I think Islam comes out here, and I think he could come out here and dominate. Obviously, we'll see, first couple rounds, scrambles and everything, but I think there is a real chance where Islam gets Arman out of here, within 3 rounds. But like I said, I think Arman's chance to win is going to be, you have to impose your will right away. And I think you have to do what Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier couldn't do to Islam right away. And hey, get that striking going early and make them feel it early, because Dustin had serious, chances in round 4. but by that time, it was already pretty much too late. So I think Arman's got to get his striking going right away. I just think we see Islam honestly dominate him, and I think Islam gets him out of there. My prediction would be a round 3 submission for Islam Makhachev.
All right. I believe everybody has a story. I believe everyone has a story, and it's up to you if you're going to complete said story. Let me dive a little deeper into what I mean by that. Alex Pereira had a story when he came to the UFC. His story was to rise up the rankings and take on the guy that had his name in his mouth, take on the guy that he knew he beat, right? In the kickboxing arena. He knew that if those two fought again, he knew he could beat him. That was his motivation to getting up off the couch, to put away the drinking problems and all that kind of stuff like that and get serious about training. Came to the UFC, ran roughshod, took on that said guy and defeated him. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. Ilya Topuria had a story. His story was he knew that he would be UFC champion. He knew he was destined to be UFC champion. Handing his opponents roses, letting them know that, hey, I'm going to defeat you. I'm going to beat you because it's my destiny to beat you. He accomplished that. Alex Pereira had another story as well, guys. His story was to avenge his mentor's loss in Glover Teixeira and defeat the guy that beat Glover in Jiri Prochazka. And then he had another story to defeat the guy who defeated his mentor again for the UFC championship in Jamal Hill. See, Alex Pereira is a special character because it's not too often you see guys basically venture off into different stories. Does that make sense? You don't really get to see guys venture off into different stories. Dustin Poirier, he had a story. Hey, I want to defeat the guy that beat me as we were both on the comp, and Conor McGregor, he completed that story. Bilal Muhammad had a story. I want to defeat Leon Edwards, the guy that absolutely worked me the first time on our way up. And how poetic was it? I defeated him for his championship belt. So I believe fighters have stories. Islam Makhachev's story was to defeat the guy that everybody was saying is the lightweight potential GOAT, better than his mentor, his brother, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Guys, I have a question that I've been asking myself the last couple of months. What is Islam's motivation now? I keep asking myself that. What is Islam's motivation now? He talked about being double champ status one day, and now he's saying he's not going to do that because Bilal's champ. So what is Islam's story? That's what I keep asking myself. What is Islam's story? Because when you can locate the story, you can locate the motivation. And once you can locate the motivation, you can somehow see how that fighter moves forward in his journey. After Islam fights on Saturday, if he wins, what's next for him? Who's next for him? An up-and-coming Paddy Pimblett, maybe? I'm just throwing names out there. Renato Moicano? I mean, you guys understand what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Is it retirement? Because I'm trying to understand his story, and I keep coming back to I don't know what his story is. I then have to look at Arman Tsarukyan's story. Arman Tsarukyan came into the UFC short notice, had a close fight against Islam, lost. Since then has run roughshod. He ran into Gamrot. I thought he got robbed in that fight. I thought he beat Gamrot. I don't think Gamrot beat him. I still stand by that. I watched the fight the other day. I think that Arman Tsarukyan beat Gamrot. And I think that they fought 9 times out of 10, he beats him. I also have to ask myself, what does a victory for Arman Tsarukyan do for the lightweight division? It gives them a pathway forward of new fights. The old guard is done. Justin Gaethje's, the Dustin Poiriers, those guys are done. we're now looking at some of the up-and-coming guys that are trying to make a name for themselves in the lightweight division. Because Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, those guys have had a hold on the lightweight division for so long. That all being said, I keep asking myself, what is Arman Tsarukyan's story? Arman Tsarukyan's story is simple. It's to avenge the loss that he had against the guy that he knows he's better than if he gets a full camp, and he's more hungry. He's more hungry than that guy. So because I can't locate Islam Makhachev's story, and I know in my heart that fight against Dustin Poirier was a lot closer than what the scorecard said, I think that this fight is going to be a lot closer than what people think. I think this fight's going to be a lot closer than what people think. And to me, the part that's interesting, this is the first time, if I'm not mistaken, and you guys can fact check me on this, this is the first time Islam Makhachev is defending or fighting for championship gold, not on Abu Dhabi, or I think in the States for that matter. He has never defended his belt or fought for the belt in the States. He fought Alexander Volkanovski in New Zealand, right? Or, if I'm not mistaken.
The Poirier fight, I think, was in
Newark.
The Topuria fight was in. Okay, so it wasn't Jersey, but this is his first time fighting in Vegas. You see, I'm just trying to add to my narrative. Hear me out.
It's actually in LA.
And it's LA. Sorry. I think Arman Tsarukyan wins this fight, guys. I don't hear me out. I know Islam Makhachev at his best is better than him. And I know based on the test of opponents, we should be able to look at it and say that, hey, you know what? Islam Makhachev, who should win this fight. I just feel like Arman Tsarukyan has more to fight for. I think Arman Tsarukyan has more to fight for. I think that his pathway to victory as well is interesting because I think that both of these guys are very standout wrestlers. I might give Arman Tsarukyan the advantage on the feet by a slim margin. I just think that sometimes Islam Makhachev, especially lately, if he can't dominate you, get you out of there earlier, he runs out of ideas. He runs out of ideas what to do, and that allows his opponent to creep back into the fight. It happened with Volkanovski. It happened with Dustin Poirier. I don't think he dominates Arman Tsarukyan. I also think Arman Tsarukyan's willpower is a lot stronger than anybody he's ever faced. Maybe Alexander Volkanovski is comparable, but I just don't think he'll be able to. The true lightweights he's fought for the belt, he struggled with. He struggled with. Charles, he worked, obviously, but I'm talking about title defense. It was Dustin Poirier. You knew what Dustin was going to do. You knew Dustin was going to try to box you. You knew Dustin was going to have the strong takedown. Arman has strong takedown. Arman has stand-up ability. I'm having a hard time identifying how Islam wins this fight running away. And for me, a lot of Islam fights are a lot closer if he can't win the fight running away. And that means by employing his wrestling game plan or just outclassing you on the feet. I don't think he does either of those things to Arman Tsarukyan. With that being said, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm picking Arman Tsarukyan to win this fight. I think that his story, his hunger is a little bit different. And I also think with the loss, well, right now the UFC has no clear-cut number one contender for the lightweight championship after this. They don't have that. This creates 1-1. Let's do a trilogy. The UFC loves some trilogies. Either way, Islam doesn't retire with a loss. I think Islam fights Arman Tsarukyan again. Will he? I'm not so sure, but I'm going with Arman Tsarukyan. Evan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I get your point here about the story. Tsarukyan has the direct motivation of I lost to this guy. It was his debut. I lost to this guy And I want that back. I got a full camp. I can win this fight. But I don't necessarily agree with that Makhachev is losing his hunger.
Really?
I just really haven't seen that out of him. I watched that Poirier fight. You know, it was definitely closer than I think, especially I expected it to be. I thought he might get that done in a round or two. But I mean, and this might be just a really weird moment to point out, but when he beat Dustin Poirier in that 5th round, and I mean, it just the emotion that came out of him at the end of that fight did not resemble a fighter to me that didn't have that
Brother, he
hunger
got
to
his
keep
head
going.
split open.
I mean,
he got his head split open against a guy in a fight that he was the heavy favorite against, and everybody expect him to dog walk. It wound up being a dog fight, and he outlasted him. 100%, you're gonna have some. You're gonna, and mind you, I'm the biggest Islam Makhachev guy. I'm the guy that fought Daniel tooth and nails when Daniel thought Charles was gonna beat him. I told everybody. But what is Islam's motivation after he wins his fight? He fights Charles Oliveira again and beats Charles Oliveira again. Like there's no motivation there for me. I understand what you're saying. But to me, I think that's a poor way to look at it. I think that his motivation after that was, damn, like I just outlasted someone in a dogfight. Because the last time we saw Islam Makhachev in a dogfight, well, he was getting his face pounded in by Alexander Volkanovski. That's what we saw, and he had a black eye. That's what we saw. So Islam's not used to having dogfights. Anybody, you take anybody on planet Earth and you put them in that situation, they're going to have that reaction. They're going to have that reaction. What I'm trying to say is, though, there's not one clear way you can say Islam Makhachev dominates the fight in this area. And that's why I've come to the conclusion that I think Arman Tsarukyan has more to fight for here. That's not to say that on another day, Islam won't beat Arman Tsarukyan. But I just think the fact that we're all saying it's a close fight, it speaks to the level of a fighter that Arman Tsarukyan is. I think it speaks to the level of how good, because you could say this, and I think we can all say this comfortably. If Islam wasn't in the lightweight division, who would be champion? Well, it probably would be Arman Tsarukyan. Now, here's something that's interesting. And Islam's talked about this briefly. Maybe his motivation, potentially, is, well, there's a guy at featherweight chirping. And maybe after I defeat Arman Tsarukyan, let's do a champion versus champion bout. Me defending my lightweight championship against Ilia Topuria.
Yeah, that was what.
Maybe that's the motivation. But that doesn't make sense if he can't get past Arman Tsarukyan. And that's my problem. Maybe he's looking past Arman, because I'm hearing Islam talking to he's talking about, like, brother, you talk about me all this time. After Saturday, you'll never talk about me again. Like, that's what he says in his promo. And it's like, you're looking past this guy, just like you look past Dustin Poirier. And that could be the undoing, because I'm telling you right now, Arman Tsarukyan is more skilled than Dustin Poirier. So if you do that, like Islam always knew his path to victory against a Dustin Poirier, if things got too hectic on the feet, was to take him to the ground. If things get hectic on the feet with Arman Tsarukyan, you can't just dive at the legs. You have to be technical about it. You have to be smart about it. And for that reason, I think Arman Tsarukyan, I think Islam Makhachev is on high upset alert. Will, what are your thoughts?
I agree. I think he could be on upset alert. But like I said, I'm going to stick with Islam, because when you talk about what is Islam's story, what is he fighting for, I'm not going to say you're missing it, but I'm going to say I think Islam is fighting to live up to the legacy of Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov and Habib.
He's already done that.
And his family. I think
he's
wants to continue that. But he's going to feel like it's almost like he's disgracing his family if he takes a loss at this point in his career when he's this close. I personally think he's like 1, maybe 2 fights away from surpassing Habib as the best ever in the lightweight division. I can't see him taking a loss. I can't see him. You can say that, but I feel like he knows he doesn't want to end it on a loss. He doesn't want to take a loss right now at this point in his career, knowing that he still wants to fulfill that legacy and live up to it. I can't see it. I can't see him taking a loss right now.
He got knocked out cold.
I'm saying right now at this point in his career.
So let me ask you a question.
After the legacy,
if he fights Ilia Topuria, what do you think is going to happen?
I think it'd be a close fight, but we're not talking about Ilya right now.
No, but you said he doesn't want to lose at this point in his career. He wants to uphold his. I'm telling you right now, Ilya Topuria will flatline KO Islam Makhachev stiff.
But I'm not even sure if they would fight. Is the thing. I don't
if I
know.
was Islam, there's no chance in hell I'm fighting Ilya. I'm beating Arman Tsarukyan on Saturday. I'm retiring.
But
there's no chance in hell I'm fighting Ilya Topuria.
But to that point, I'm gonna be. Do you think that? I think there is no way Islam looks at Ilya and says, "I'm gonna lose to him."
No,
and that's where I think could be.
That's what Volkanovski thought, though.
But no, I think that's the difference of what would happen versus what Islam would think would happen. I think Islam would take that fight confident.
And Islam took this fight with the thought. Remember, Islam fought tooth. Islam didn't want this fight. Islam tried to fight other fights. The UFC said, no, Arman Tsarukyan's next in line. And part of it is, I already beat this guy. Why do I have to fight him again? Well, we got to fight him again because the guy has run roughshod through all the guys that the UFC is basically giving him. Mm-hmm. To me, he could feel as confident as hell as he wants to against Ilya Topuria. I'm telling y'all, like, I've been right about Tom Aspinall, right about Islam's rise, was right about Habib's rise. I'm not trying to act like I know it. I'm just being honest with you right here. Islam Makhachev would get knocked out cold by Ilya Topuria.
We're talking about the motivation, though. I'm with you. I'm with you.
No, I'm agreeing with. Okay. Listen, I'm agreeing with you. It makes sense. It makes sense why Islam would feel confident. Yeah. It would make sense why Islam would think. Islam is the lightweight champion of the world. He thought Volkanovski was the best thing the featherweight division had to offer. In his mind, there's nobody that could beat him in the planet. In his mind, he believes if Bilal wasn't welterweight champion, he'd be welterweight champion. Of course, he's going to have that confidence. But there's confidence, right? Because confidence comes from knowing. And then there's delusion. He thought he was going to run right through Dustin Poirier. That didn't happen. That didn't happen at all. He thinks he's going to run right through Arman Tsarukyan. He's not taking Arman nearly as serious as he should have. He's not. Mm-hmm. He thought he was going to run through Volkanovski the first time. He didn't. He blamed it on IVs and all this XYZ, blah, 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 blah. They fought again, albeit it was on short notice. He knocks out Volkanovski. To me, to be honest with you, I think that fight is close again. If Volkanovski didn't rush to take that fight on short notice, I think that fight would have been close again. Islam has not been this champion that has just dominated the way Habib has. The reason why I said he passed Habib is because of the level, the resume, the opponents he's beaten. That's all. He's not better than Habib. To me, he hasn't been this dominant champion that we make him out to be. The Volkanovski fight was a fluke. The second fight it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. He's better than Volk. Don't get me wrong. But it shouldn't have happened in that short span. It wasn't fair to Volk. It wasn't fair to the first fight. It wasn't fair to the fan base that were clamoring for a second fight. And for me, if he struggled to dominate a featherweight, if he struggled to dominate a journeyman, respectfully to Dustin Diamond Poirier, struggled to beat him, this is the first real serious lightweight contender he's fought. This is the first, you're talking about a budding lightweight contender, a guy that's run roughshod, the guy that has the wrestling ability, that has the striking ability, that has the cardio. I'm sorry, I don't see Islam just running roughshod through Arman. I don't see it. I see him looking past Arman, and I think that's going to be his fault if he does lose this fight. Now, I could be wrong. And part of me is picking it because I don't want to go with what the masses are saying, but to me, it makes sense. I think Arman Tsarukyan, skill for skill, is very similar to Islam Makhachev. And I could see a world in which Islam Makhachev overlooks Arman Tsarukyan and loses this fight, and we're set up for trilogy. And that will be his motivation to prove that he's better than him. Just my thoughts. Evan.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back to the Ilya Topuria fight here, and I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. I think Ilya Topuria is the uncrowned #1 pound-for-pound fighter on the face of the earth right now. I think that dude has every single skill that makes you the best fighter on planet Earth. He has some of the, if not the greatest knockout power I've seen ever. I mean, he knocked Max Holloway out, who had really never been officially knocked down other than the one in the Gaethje fight. But, I mean, he took that guy's chin away with one punch. I mean, he put him on wobbly street with one and then knocked him out with the second one. I think he does the exact same thing to Islam Makhachev. But I just don't think I'm nearly as high on Arman Tsarukyan as I am on Ilya Topuria. I mean, everything I've seen out of Ilya Topuria shows that he can match or be better than Islam in any category. But I just think Islam just kind of edges out Arman in
that.
every single category. I think he's a faster striker. I think he's a stronger wrestler. I think he can hold the fight against the clinch better or against the cage than Arman can. But I definitely think that there is a path to victory for Sarukian, and just based off of motivation alone.
He's so skilled, man. He's so skilled. And here's one thing I want to say to you, Ev, real quick. Like, we've seen in combat sports, guys look past guys and get upset. We've seen it. We saw it with Amanda Nunes versus Juliana Pena. We saw it. We saw it when she was looking forward to the Kayla Harrison fight. Listen, and by the way, I think she comes back too. But let's not forget Anthony Joshua, even though it's not MMA, it's combat. Anthony Joshua looked past what was his name?
Recently.
Right. It was just
Not
the tip of my man, I'm drawing a blank. He got knocked out. He got knocked down a couple of times. He was heavyweight champ, huge favorite. Anthony Joshua loses to the guy, loses the belt, shocks the entire world. The entire world gets shocked, gets upset. Andy Ruiz. Remember the bigger guy? He beats him. They fight again for the second time. Anthony Joshua wins this time around. To me, sometimes when champions lose, it has nothing to do with you being more skilled than the guy. It has something, sometimes it's just about motivation. Sometimes you need that reminder. Sometimes you need that tickle in your belly again to get you going. I think that Arman is being counted out by everyone. And I'm sorry, I just don't think that Islam Makhachev has had these dominant performances outside of when he dominated Charles. I don't think he's had these dominant performances that makes us feel confident and saying that he is not overlooking Arman Sarukian and he's not going to have a tough time with Arman Sarukian. Even if he, quote unquote, can edge him out, he might. I think if these guys fight 9 out of 10 times, you could get mixed bag results. I really believe that. And for that reason, I side with Arman this time around because I think he has more to fight for. I think the motivation is tougher there. I think Umar Nurmagomedov wins the bantamweight championship, but I think Arman Sarukian loses against. I think Arman Sarukian defeats Islam Makhachev. That's my prediction. Dan, you got anything else you want to add?
No, I think this was very good conversation. I think that there's many different pathways that it can go, and I really pencil it to looking at Islam's fights and the two in particular, Poirier and Volkanovski. Both fights, we could say Islam clearly outstruck the other guy, clearly outclassed him. The Poirier fight, he outstruck Dustin Poirier, but that doesn't mean in round 4 mentally, where were the fighters? And you could even tell when Khabib talks about the Dustin Poirier fight with Islam, Khabib even said, yeah, that was a very, very close fight. I think if Arman wins, he takes Islam to the deep water and he has to finish him. I don't think Arman wins the decision. So,
can I be with you too? Yeah. I don't think Islam has as great of a gas tank as people think he does. Respectfully. I don't think he does. I've seen him get gas now against Volkanovski and against Poirier. I'm curious. I'm curious if this fight does go into deep end. It's going to be pivotal for for Islam to bank those first couple of rounds. It's going to be pivotal. If it's not going to be a situation where he gets him out of there early, it's going to be pivotal because I think that Arman Sarukian can outlast Islam Makhachev. Yes, respectfully.
And I think that's how the fight goes. I think if Arman wins, I think it's a quick turn of events, and I think he either rocks him, gets him to the ground, quick TKO. I think that's where we've seen Islam mentally somewhat break against Volkanovski. In my opinion, that 5th round, he took it off because he knew he was going to win. And I think if he's in that position, round 4 against Arman, hey, I've won the first 3 rounds, I think it could go very bad. A couple big elbows, and that would be the pathway to victory.
Let's be clear. With all due respect to Volkanovski, this is Islam's 2nd title defense at lightweight. That's the way I'm viewing it. That's the way I view it. It's the 2nd title defense against a true lightweight. Yeah. That's the way I'm viewing it. I don't rate the 2nd fight against Volkanovski. Sure, it was great highlight. But this is a guy in Arman Sarukian where he's truly the number 1 contender. He earned this spot. He earned this title opportunity, and it won't shock me if he makes the most of it. We want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to the UFC 311 pre-show presented by the Right Way Sports Network. Make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from the TWSN studios. Boys, it was great. We're excited for a huge night of fight actions. Make sure you guys subscribe to our Patreon if you want to get all the official picks from yours truly for UFC 311.